FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
And welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. As you know, one of our base precepts is libertarianism. Free markets allow the market to function, and then you don't need government to level the playing field, to make everybody equal, to give everybody an equal shot at everything, because it doesn't work anyway. And of course, when we're talking about libertarianism, we always attend every year FreedomFest in Las Vegas, and we're pleased to have Mark Skousen, founder of FreedomFest, on with us now. He's out in California. He's teaching course over at Chapman University. And Mark, welcome.
Good to be with you. How you doing, Kerry?
All right. So you're teaching some courses over at Chapman University. Tell us what you're doing there.
Well, it's just a great opportunity. Chapman is an up-and-coming university, great university. Jim Doty is the president, been there for 20 years, and he's done a remarkable job of putting this university on the map by bringing people like Vernon Smith, the Nobel Prize-winning economist in experimental economics. It has its own building and building a reputation here. It has a law school, a film school, a business school, and I'm teaching a couple courses. I'm a presidential fellow appointed last year and this year to teach a course, give a public lecture, and I'm teaching right now a course called Libertarian CEOs, where our case studies are the Koch brothers, Koch Industries, Whole Foods Market with John Mackey, BB&T Bank, which is the fastest growing regional bank that was developed under a Ayn Rand model, if you will, by John Allison, who has left BB&T, but the bank is still operating under the principles that Allison established. He's now with the Cato Institute. And then we have a case study. The last case study is Bill Bonner and Agora Financial, a private newsletter business, really actually my competitor. And so we have over 30 students. They're loving it. It's great to be out here. I encourage your listeners, if they're out in California, to come by Chapman. They have statues of Milton Friedman, Adam Smith, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and even Ayn Rand. I think it's the only university in the United States that has a statue of Ayn Rand.
Really?
Yeah, pretty impressive.
And these students that you're teaching, what kind of backgrounds are they coming from?
Well, they're definitely upper middle class. There's no question about that. There are not a lot of minorities here, as opposed to when I was teaching at Mercy College back in New York. But they're very bright. They're very ambitious, and I think there's a lot of future leaders here. So it's really fun to teach them.
And as far as free markets go, and obviously you're teaching about what happens when government intervenes in the free market, what kind of feedback you're getting? Because I assume most of them, it's probably something relatively new to their way of thinking.
Well, I think it depends on the students. I would say the majority of the students are Republican, conservative types, leaning toward libertarian thinking. I would like to think that. I don't get as many arguments from these students that I did when I was teaching in the East. And I will tell you, though, a year ago when I taught a class on who's winning the battle of ideas, and we talked about the theories of Adam Smith, Karl Marx, and John Maynard Keynes, I did ask at the end of the course, who's your favorite economist? And a couple of my students said Karl Marx. So I may not have been able to. I thought I did a pretty good job of discrediting Marx, but maybe not.
I didn't know that he was an economist, so that's a new one on me. But
oh yeah, no, Marx is viewed. He's more of a philosopher and a political philosopher than anything, but he's definitely considered an economist. And any history of economics has a major section. I know in my book, The Making of Modern Economics, and The Big Three in Economics, both those books, Karl Marx plays. I have a full chapter on Marx. Of course, it's called Marx Madness Plunges Economics into a New Dark Age. So you kind of know where I stand on Karl Marx.
Yeah, well, yeah. What I say is, it's just his ideas are so far out there that they're just out and out wrong. And and have, like you said, Mark's madness, just set the world into something that down a path that I don't know how we get back from it, because so much of where we're at now really a result of him, a result of Keynes, and it's really difficult to make our fellow humans understand the concept that there isn't a free lunch, and that the free market is a far better allocator of resources than any wise men sitting up in the emperor's room, whether it's in Washington or Rome or in Brussels or in Beijing, for that matter.
Yeah, I think, Kerry, the problem is that there are a lot of emotional buttons that the Marxists and the Keynesians push, and you see that even with President Obama, and the Democrats are often emphasizing the issues of social justice, of fairness, of discrimination, of people who are disenfranchised one way or another from the market system. They're out of a job, they're hurting financially. The cost of living is rising. The rent is too damn high.
Right.
All of those kind of arguments that you hear play a role in affecting people, so that they can favor the minimum wage law because it looks good on the surface. Never mind that you might lose your job, or machines may take the place of workers. Those are the unintended consequences of government intervention. And it's a fairly sophisticated model. I mean, I have to teach this stuff. And even then, by the end of the semester, you wonder how many of the students really get it, especially when they become in the political arena, where there's still very strong demand for this kind of intervention like minimum wage or progressive taxation.
I know. How do you explain to an 18, 19-year-old who's attending college on loans or with student aid, with grants, Pell Grants, whatever, that you would be much better off if student loans didn't exist and these Pell Grants didn't exist, because your college would be 10% or 20%. Your tuition would be 20% of what it is now. They don't believe you. And the market would set the price rather than having artificially inflated tuition and professors making probably 5 times more than they would if there was a free market in college professors. They just can't get their arms around it. Very difficult.
Yeah, no, it's a very difficult argument. I give a talk to college students on money, investing, and debt, and student debt in particular. And I really warn against student debt, but it's so seductive that it's really hard to talk them out of it, because they think it's aid when in fact it's a debt you have to pay off. And in fact, now they changed the law so that if you stop paying, you can't declare bankruptcy and get around it. You still have to pay it. So it's really a struggle. I have one daughter who's still got $30,000 or $40,000 that she owes on student debt, and she is paying it off, but it's a real burden.
Hey, Mark, you can't even get your college transcript if you're in default on your loans. So It's like you never even went to college, but that's all fair. So it's fair until you defaulted on your loans, then try to get your transcript and you're up the creek without a paddle.
So, Kerry, you're telling me that you defaulted on student loan, you can't get your transcripts.
Correct.
It's a personal thing.
Yeah, correct. So it's all well and good. To me, the greatest gift I gave my children, besides life itself, and you could argue with that, is the fact that I put them through college with no debt, and other than their credit card
good for
debt.
you.
Yeah. So, and that was just a luck of pure fortuitousness and circumstance. able to do it. So, hey, Freedom Fest coming up. You keep adding to it. It keeps getting better and better. You got some more debates on the agenda, I saw.
Yeah, we just sent out an announcement having Peter Thiel. I don't know if you've seen his new book, 0 to 1, but he has a whole section on there defending monopolistic powers and denigrates the competitive spirit. He thinks it's overplayed in American society. And so we're having John Mackey of Whole Foods Markets, both of these two very successful entrepreneurs, battle it out in a debate on that subject. We also have a great debate on war. What is it good for? You know, with this whole issue of ISIS and the Middle East, it's never-ending problem. We have a really good debate between I'm trying to think of it's Ian Morris, who's from Stanford University. He's written a book, War, What It Is Good For, and he argues that it's good for a lot of things, and he uses the case of Japan, U.S. transforming the Japanese and the Germans up to World War II. So he's going to make that argument against. I'm just drawing a blank on Andrea. I'm trying to think of her name with antiwar.com. Keaton. I think that's Keaton is her last name. Andrea Keaton, I think that's her name, who is from antiwar.com, who is going to make the case that we really should not engage ourselves in all of these wars in the Middle East, that it's just going to backfire on us, and it's spreading mainly because we've now become the enemy, et cetera. There's just no end to the creation of enemies when we go after these people.
Yeah, well, if you were pro-war at some point in the past, after seeing what's happened in the past decade, hard to be pro-war now, that's for sure. And, Mark, I in this discussion group down here, and I'm trying to explain to somebody that the way an economy really grows, the way you build wealth is through savings and accumulation of capital, deferred compensation, the exact opposite of what's taking place now. And what he says to me, well, that was the way it used to work, 100 years ago. Economies don't work that way anymore. And I said, exactly the point, because the government's involved in it and it can't function properly. But we're kind of involved in a difficult fight, because that's a kind of dated notion of free markets, and it's kind of a romantic notion of the past, if you will. It really makes the fight really difficult when everybody just kind of says, well, that's the way it was in the past, but can't work that way now,
Yeah. In fact, it was funny because I just heard on an interview with Robert Shiller, who's the Nobel Prize-winning economist. He has this new book out called Irrational Exuberance, or a new edition of Irrational Exuberance. And he was saying that he encourages all of his students and all of the people to save more because the golden age of investing is over. So you just need to save more because you're not going to make the big returns on your investments. And then the guy says, yeah, but if everybody saves more, won't that ruin the country? And yes, Schiller said it would. The paradox of thrift that Keynes talked about. If everybody saved more, we end up in the doghouse because people. Consumer spending is the key to economic growth, and if consumers stop spending, then savings won't be invested and so forth. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. There's no evidence of it whatsoever. In fact, the evidence is just the opposite. The more people save on an individual national basis, the better off individuals and countries are. And yet you have this cockeyed anti-savings mentality that keeps running through our society that I keep fighting all the time. And it's, the traditions that you're talking about, the Ben Franklin traditions of the three virtues of industry, thrift, and prudence, all of those apply today just as much as they did 200 years ago when Ben Franklin was alive.
Exactly. And And the idea, okay, one of the biggest problems here and destructive forces in society is this concept of consumer debt. How did we get into this, that consumer debt is better than commercial debt, loaning funds to aspiring enterprises who require funds to expand and hire more people? It's just, the world's been turned on its head, Mark, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. I warn people all the time on consumer debt, the dangers of it. It's not to say there aren't times when consumer debt is valuable. There's no question that you need to borrow money to get a mortgage, to buy a house, to maybe even buy a car, or maybe justified to some extent. But that's about it. There's really no justification for the huge credit card debts and all that sort of thing that seems to constantly beguile us.
It's much easier to get consumer debt than it is to get business debt for a business to grow, and it's just the outlets for consumer debt are manyfold. Regardless what your credit rating is, you can get consumer debt. As long as you can fog a mirror, as long as you have a pulse, you can get debt. But a business that wants to start up, that wants to grow, it's getting more and more next to impossible for that business to get debt without virtually 100% collateral.
Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, crowdfunding is a very popular thing now, and I think this is a great godsend to, I think it's really created a whole new entrepreneurial class. And you look at how popular shows are, like Shark Tank, that really goes contrary to your pessimism, my friend.
I'll agree with you there that there are additional avenues opening up, but and of course you've got like entities like Lending Tree and Prosper, where people can go and get funds. And interestingly enough, analysis done of people who got into trouble with their credit cards, quite a substantial amount of their cards were used to finance new businesses, interestingly enough. So yeah,
it's a dangerous game, but some people are desperate, and that's what they have to do, because that's all short-term debt that I guess it can be considered long-term in the sense that you only have to pay 5% of it each month, but still, it's not like a 10-year loan or something like that.
No, and really I guess the Federal Reserve, the U.S. government, in large measure is responsible for the shifting of these priorities, and to a large extent, the housing boom. Really, housing is a consumable item. It's consumption on a large scale, really made into something far different than just getting shelter for the family.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting area. One of the things I just highlighted in our FreedomFest update is on the subject of real estate, and our theme is the American dream. And are we getting back to, can we restore the American dream, or is there a brand new American dream? The whole real estate market is a real interesting, and we have Jack Reed, who is the foremost real estate authority, coming to FreedomFest. And, there's a secular downward trend on real estate, single-family home real estate. And even Alan Greenspan, who I talked about, I met a couple months ago at the New Orleans conference, he commented on the secular decline in home ownership. It's dropped to like 60% or something like that. People are renting now more and more. People are moving into apartments that have all kinds of amenities that you can't get in a single-family home. And after young people watching Seinfeld and Friends, and that's where they want. That's the kind of life they want to live. They don't want the responsibility of home ownership. So how does that affect you as an investor? Well, I think the fact is that you're not going to see the big profits that we used to make in homes. Homes are going to be viewed as consumer items that depreciate in value and don't make you any money, and you can't really count on it anymore as a place to make money.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the millennials saw their parents go bust and saw their homes get foreclosed upon. So it's no longer, hey, work hard, go to college, get your degree, and go buy your own home. Plus, these millennials are saddled with huge amounts of student loan debt, and that's got to be paid off. And the way the job market is, they could be spending a large portion of their life paying down that student loan debt, which we said is non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. And hey, I guess they've kind of, the American dream has changed. And then I guess the populace feeling like the banks really have put one over on all of us. And when you combine all these things, home ownership ain't what it used to be. Probably you and I, not that many years apart, we went to college and wanted to get out, get a home, and start a family. And that was the American dream, right?
Well, I made money on, I bought 3 or 4 homes in my lifetime, maybe more. And this last house that I bought in New York in 2004, we'll be lucky. Here it is 10 years later, 11 years later, we'll be lucky if we make any money on it at all. And that's in New York. The New York area has usually been immune to depressions in real estate, but the market's just over with, and the level of taxation just for living in the state of New York is just becoming unbearable, I think, and so people are struggling, and they're smart if they move to Florida or some other low-tax state.
Yeah, I think there is a mass exodus taking place in high-tax states to low-tax states. And it's not just for the weather, although the weather isn't bad either. I have to admit, I've done it myself. And in these from the blue states to the red states, there was just a study done where effectively your purchasing power of the dollar goes further in these red states because the housing costs are so much less. Generally, the taxation, local, state and local taxation in red states is way, way less than in the blue states. Their welfare programs not as extensive. And as a result, your purchasing power just goes way, way further, even though the average income is much less in the red states. And yeah, that's what you're seeing, I guess.
Well, in fact, I can't wait for our dream debate at FreedomFest between Paul Krugman and Steve Moore, because one of the hot button issues is going to be red state versus blue state. And I know Krugman has been arguing that everything is just fine here in California after they raise taxes, and they supposedly have a surplus now, and it's all really very good and well. And I'm looking forward to confronting him on these issues and comparing the real data. And we're thinking of even having an objective analyst on the side who, whenever somebody makes a statement, they'll Google it and see, kind of a fact checker during the debate. That'll really be fun to say, oh, by the way, Mr. Krugman or Mr. Moore. I mean, we're going to try to get an objective person. And if you say something wrong, we're going to do it. So it's not going to be your typical debate where somebody says something for 10 minutes and the other person says something in 10 minutes. I'm going to be the moderator, and we're going to go issue by issue and try to hold their feet to the fire as to what is really true or not. So I'm very excited about this. We're trying to take Freedom Fest to a whole new level here, and I hope your listeners will be signing up here. We have over 1,000 people who've already signed up. This is going to be a really fun conference this year.
Well, I think that alone is worth the price of admission. Mark, just tell us where we sign up and
So
we get the tickets?
just go to freedomfest.com. And we also have all the announcements on our upcoming speakers and so forth, so you get an idea of who's speaking and all our different events, our luncheons, our breakfasts, our Saturday night banquet. It's going to be fun with Rich Little. We're looking forward to a little entertainment there. But we have like 10 debates set up, and we're going to talk about the vaccine debate. That'll be kind of a fun debate because that's a real libertarian issue. Do you allow? Oh, by the way, we have an anarchy debate again. We have this new guy, Wellman, Michael. I guess Humor is his name. Has written a book called "The Problem of Political Authority." We're going to debate anarchy, but how do you deal with the vaccination problem, where there's apparently a public good there? There are externalities involved. How do you deal with that? I think it'll be a really interesting debate.
Yeah, that is interesting because, just as an aside, I was talking to a doctor prior to measles immunization. 1,000 Americans a year died from measles. After immunization, 0 Americans. So that's the fact. Now, you can argue about whether immunizations cause autism or not. The science seems to be against it. I'm not sure if it's proven or not, but that is the fact. Do you want the 1,000 people to die or not? Is it up to the government to force people to have immunizations? I'm not sure, but I think the debate is worth having because I don't like the government forcing us to do anything, but
right.
I think I want to stay for that debate as well. So you'll find the link to Freedom Fest on the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Hey, Mark, the dates again, it's in July, right?
Yep, July 8th through the 11th at Planet Hollywood. We take over the entire hotel. I mean, it is a wonderful love fest of libertarians and free market, free minds coming together. If you haven't been to it, you owe yourself a favor to come. You talk to people and they just rave about the fun times they have at Freedom Fest in the entertainment capital of the world in Las Vegas. So just think 7-Eleven, Las Vegas. See you there.
Hey, and I don't miss it now. This will be my 4th or 5th year, and we will see you there, Mark. Thanks so much for being on.
Hey, my pleasure. Bye-bye.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.